But we finally know why Brett Yormark has this emphatic stance for the 5+11 college football playoff model, which would be 5 automatic qualifiers, conference champs, and then 11 at-large bids. He has spoken about it for the first time that I have seen publicly. The real question here is, based on his logic and based on everything he said, is he being too naive? Is Brett Yormark being too naive in leading the Big 12 down this path instead of accepting 2 auto bids that would be there in the other plan that is being discussed? Okay. So this all comes from the Triple Option podcast, Rob Stone, Urban Meyer, Mark Ingram, basically the Fox crew that you see on Big Noon Kickoff. It's those guys doing their podcast. They brought Brett Yormark on. He had a lot to say. I mean, I was skeptical going in, just like, okay, they're Fox. They're like an official partner of the league here. How much will they really push him? How much will they really ask? How much will they really get out of him? I was intrigued. I thought this was better than I would have anticipated because of that. Now, some of that is just, Brett Yormark was more forthcoming with information. But I'm not going to give you this exact quote from Brett Yormark, but I will say he opened up. I know so many are skeptical. So many across college athletics are very skeptical about the ability of the College Sports Commission to be able to actually enforce the NIL rules, parameters that have been set up here, basically enforcing fair market value on this. Most people think they won't be able to, or it won't hold up to scrutiny in court, or people will just be cheating and handing out cash under the table anyway. Brett Yormark came in about as strong as you possibly can, that the guardrails are there. It is going to work. They will be able to adjudicate this. There is nothing to worry about. He was very strong in that. And it was even in the face of, like, he got asked that by Urban Meyer, who was basically saying, I mean, straight up, I think he used the term BS, but just actually said that out loud, like basically that the NCAA has no teeth, that the NCAA would not be able to enforce any of this because he had seen time and again examples of the NCAA not being able to effectively enforce things when he was a head coach. So there's that. And Brett Yormark was still just like, no, we got it. I think we'll do this. And he got Urban Meyer to get to the point where he was like, okay, well, congratulations. That sounds great. So he kind of backed Urban Meyer down. And I will drop this nugget in too. It's this whole podcast is worth listening to just to hear Urban Meyer complaining at one point about the selection committee and how he doesn't like the 5+11 playoff format as much because it still involves the selection committee and how much error could be there. Man, has there been a coach that has benefited more? Maybe Nick Saban, but outside of that, I don't know that there's a coach that's benefited more from the selection committee over the time that we've had one in the college football playoff than Urban Meyer. The guy has one of his national championships literally came because of the selection committee. And this is where I again mention the 2014 TCU Horned Frogs. Like, Ohio State got the jump into the playoff over those two, the TCU and Baylor tied Big 12 co-champs into the college football playoff, and then he eventually won that national championship. He got a hell of a kiss there when TCU was at number 3 and won by 50 and then fell out. Like, of all the people that complain about that, an Ohio State head coach, and then Urban Meyer, who personally benefited with a national championship from that. I had to laugh at that. Had to chuckle very, very hard at that. Anyway, the playoff format is why you're all here. It's what is most interesting about this. So Brett Yormark was asked by Rob Stone, what was your reaction? The way he phrased it was like, what was your reaction to first hearing about the 4-4-2-2-1 plan, right? Okay, so 4-4-2-2-1 plan. That is your plan being championed by the Big Ten. It would be 4 auto bids for the SEC and Big Ten, 2 for the ACC and Big 12. And here is what Brett Yormark had to say.
And I didn't like it because I just felt that it created a huge divide between us and those two conferences. Now, as you guys know, I have good self-awareness. I know where we reside in the world of college football. But I just felt that it put a line in the sand that didn't need to be there. Okay, I'm a firm believer in that, if you create value, you should be rewarded, earn it on the field. Okay, every year's a new year. And by the way, with settlement, in theory, it should be creating a level playing field across the board. I've got a great relationship with my colleagues, within the Power Four. And I do believe that we will ultimately get to a place that is good for all of us. It might not be great for all of us, but it'll be good for all of us.
Okay. Did that not sound exactly like the explanation that I and many others, I'm not claiming that I was brilliant here, but it sounded exactly like what everybody was saying when this happened. Like, people were questioning. I got questions on Twitter from people that read the newsletter all over the place. Like, why is Yormark doing this? This doesn't seem to make much sense. Josh Payton, Joel Klatt, their pitch, their case seems to really make sense. Like, this will be worse. Less Big 12 teams will get in the playoff. More SEC teams will get in the playoff. That will widen the gap. Why would you do this? Said it was all about codifying it. You don't want to put in pen, we are half the conference of the SEC and Big Ten for a wide variety of reasons. And that's what Brett Yormark just told you there. We don't need to put a line in the sand that is unnecessary. Why would we put that line in the sand when we don't have to? Maybe it will, he's not saying this part, but maybe it will happen anyway because we don't really have an option. The Big Ten and the SEC can make the final decision on this. They can do whatever it is that they want. That's how it's written into the contract. But we're not going to voluntarily do that to ourselves. We don't want to do that to ourselves. We don't want to signal that to the rest of the world. We don't want to signal that to recruits. We don't want to signal that to coaches that we're trying to keep around in our conference. We don't want to signal that to future business partners who could look at that and say, all right, well, you're definitely not getting a penny more than half of what the SEC or Big Ten is getting. We don't want to do that for any of those strategic reasons. And that's what Brett Yormark just confirmed there. So I hate to break it to you. If you are somebody that does really want the 4-4-2-2-1, I guess I'll just say it seems like he is very confident in his position and even confident, I guess, in the position of, hey, we'll get something that's okay. Now, that's a very loose way to say that. That leaves a lot of room for interpretation on what could happen that could be good for everybody. He said not great for everybody, but good for everybody. But as far as his decision on 4-4-2-2-1 and 5+11, Brett Yormark's not a dumb guy. He also admitted there, one thing I would point out that is key to pay attention to is he admitted, like, hey, I've got self-awareness about where we are at. This is not a guy, if you think that this is somebody who is Brett Yormark just way off his rocker and thinks way too much of the league and like, oh, we'll be great. We've got programs on the rise. We'll start rocketing up the rankings and we will have 3 teams in the top 16 every year. No, Brett Yormark is not dumb. He understands and has self-awareness, which you would have to. If you guys have seen how the SEC and the Big Ten act. If you're in a room with Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey, you're going to get some self-awareness pretty quick, at least of what they think about you. Because the way that they are making moves right now, they're not here to appease anybody for no reason. So he's been in those rooms, guys. He is very well aware of where the Big 12 is actually at. But he also knows, like, we can't just willingly back down. That's not how we win this fight long term, is by willingly back down. So it's clear that is the motivation there. Now we have like official confirmation from Brett Yormark. He has said it. I'll be interested to hear. I mean, we're a little bit under a month. We're like just over 3 weeks, I believe, away from Big 12 Media Days. I will be interested to hear and see what Brett Yormark has to say there, if anything has changed by that point in time or what his tone will be there. Now, is he being naive? I mean, I think some of the critics here would say, yes, he's being naive in that he seems to think there is a chance that over the long term, the Big 12 can be more than half of what the Big 10 and the SEC are. And certainly, like, Big 12 haters would say that. That's a very naive take to think that. But even I think a lot of people within the Big 12, I saw a lot of criticism from concerned Big 12 fans over this. I think they would say, some of them, this is a bit naive from him to think that there's a chance to do more. But even as I say that, man, it's like, do you hear the words coming out of my mouth? That's just such a depressing thought and way to say it and think about it. Like, oh, there will never be more for us. There will never be more for us. I mean, I can barely get it out of my mouth without almost like gagging on that. Like, come on, I said it's Braveheart. Someone's handing you a sword. Take it and go fight. sword, spear, whatever it is that they have there. Like, get ready, man. Go be on the front lines with this thing. But I do think some would say, hey, this is foolish because you're not just taking the best that you can get and you're being too naive about what your place in the world is. You could also say, hey, that part at the end about how we're going to get a good solution for everybody, that could be perceived as a bit naive. Now, that also may just be him saying what he feels like he needs to say publicly. But I would look at that and say, if really with the SEC and Big Ten ultimately having all that power, and you think it's going to be and they're already fighting, by the way, over this format because they're at odds, they disagree, that we're going to come up with something that's good for everybody. I don't know. That does feel like it could be, if we're taking that at face value from Brett Yormark, that does feel like it could be a little bit naive. More likely, it's somebody is going to win this power struggle. Most likely, obviously, it's going to be SEC, Big Ten centric, but even between them, somebody will win that battle and be more happy than the other. And you're going to have some people that are unhappy at the end of the day, or maybe it takes a different iteration. We get some kind of different format that's probably going to go to the point where it will be maybe an okay deal for you. Very good to great for the Big Ten, SEC, perhaps a little bit naive. But I just close with this. And some of you roll your eyes, I'm sure, at this every time I say it, because I know there are some that just don't, maybe not a ton, but I know a faction of people that are just never really seem to be that on board with Brett Yormark. I would say a lot of them are a little bit more like on the casual end, like not paying as much attention and as in the weeds on all of this as I have to be, and as many of you are that watch this channel, which is totally fine, by the way. But when I listen to him talk, especially with this, and especially with issues that are as important as this and as complex as this, the guy is just really confident, man. The guy speaks with confidence. He speaks like a leader. He speaks like somebody who is very forward-thinking and innovative. And I love all that. Doesn't mean anything in terms of it being guaranteed to work. Yes, I know. You could find me a million examples of really charismatic leaders who were terribly off in their convictions and what they tried to do, and that things failed horribly. I know that it doesn't actually mean anything. It's not necessarily substantive, but damn it, it is really nice after what the leadership of the league was like for so long. And I'm a guy who, I defend Bob Bowlesby. I think he got too much criticism at the end of his tenure when Texas and Oklahoma were leaving. I think he did a pretty good job, but man, he was not that. Like, you listen to Bob Bowlesby talk, you're not coming away thinking the same thing that you are when you listen to Brett Yormark talk. So, pretty good interview. Again, I would suggest it. Triple Option Podcast. Go listen to the whole thing.